One of the militias that I interviewed said it's the cheapest weapon. If you want to drive out your enemy from a village and take it over, if you rape the women and children, you are humiliating the men, making them feel they can't protect the women and children. You're terrorized. I personally see women as the heroes in war, because the people that are trying to keep life together when the conflict is going on and all hell is breaking loose, the people that are generally trying to feed the children and educate them and protect them, and almost always the women, and yet there's no recognition for that. We don't have statues for. Unfortunately, rape is a very effective weapon in war. If you want to drive out your enemy from a village and take it over, if you rape the women and children, you are humiliating the men, making them feel they can't protect the women and children. You're terrorizing the community, and people will often flee. It's very cheap, as I said. It's less than a cost of a Kalashnikov bullet. Nobody's being brought to justice for it. Maybe women are talking about it more and are more open about it, but I also think that it's actually happening on a much bigger scale. And if you just think of some of the things that have happened in the last 10 years, for example, the Yazidis who were taken from their homes in Iraq by Islamic State fighters, that was thousands of women, around 7,000 women. Then you had the girls in Nigeria, like the Chibok girls, who were taken from their school in the middle of the night and taken into the forest by Boko Haram fighters. And I went to northeast Nigeria to talk to people about that. Again, it turned out that was just the tip of the iceberg. There were tens of thousands of women and girls that this had happened to. And then in 2017, in Bangladesh, you had women and girls escaping from their villages in Burma. And again, tens of thousands of women, 700,000 people fled in 3 months, who were mostly women and children. Every woman I spoke to had stories of being dragged from her hut and tied to a banana tree and gang raped. When I started looking into it, it was clear that it was happening in so many places. I actually felt like I could have spent the rest of my life writing about it. I'm absolutely sure that it's happening much more. And I think should happen. I personally see women as the heroes in war, because the people that are trying to keep life together when the conflict is going on and all hell is breaking loose, the people that are generally trying to feed the children and educate them and protect them and the elderly, almost always the women, and yet there's no recognition for that. We don't have statues for. One of the reasons I wrote this book was because I was so angry and upset at what I felt like. If I, as a war correspondent for more than 35 years, didn't know that this was going on such a scale, then why should anyone back home know? And I thought people ought to know about it. Some people, I've had editors saying that no one wants to read about this. I think our job as a reporter is to often to make people feel uncomfortable and to think about uncomfortable issues. Otherwise, things won't change. So what I've tried to do is to spread awareness, to talk to people like we're talking now in as many countries as possible about what's happening and make people think about it. And I think people were generally very shocked to hear the stories and the scale that it's happening. Literally tens of thousands of women around the world are being raped every year. Esse livro foi o mais difícil. What kept me going was to think, however hard it was for me to write that book, and however hard it is for people to read the stories, that is nothing compared to the ordeal that the women and girls went through and their bravery in telling their stories. So I felt like the least I could do was actually try and give them a platform. As I said, I felt strongly that these women wanted to tell their stories, wanted people to know so that they would do something. So that was my responsibility. It's difficult because obviously, each story is its own story. And often I felt like I couldn't imagine anything worse than what I'd heard. And then somebody would tell me something even more shocking. So one is a 16-year-old Yazidi girl who was taken by a fat ISIS judge who literally tied her to his bed and raped her every night. And she told me that the worst night of her life was when he brought back a 10-year-old girl and raped her in the room next door. And she listened to this girl crying for her mother all night. And that story was so hard for her to tell. And I kept saying to her, you don't need to tell this story, we can stop. And she was very fierce. She said, no, I don't want anybody to be able to say they didn't know. So that really stuck with me. But I also was really moved by the oldest people that I interviewed for this book, which was a group of grandmothers and great-grandmothers in their late 80s in the Philippines, known as the Lolas, who were taken when they were not even at puberty during the Second World War in the 1940s by Japanese forces and taken to be so-called comfort women. And raped over and over again by Japanese soldiers, sometimes as many as 50 times in a day. And those women, when they were released at the end of the war, never spoke about what had happened. Only in recent years, after one of them came out on the radio, Rosa bravely, and the others heard, and now they came forward. So finally, they're speaking about it 75 years after it happened. They're trying to get justice. And in their case, they just want acknowledgement of what happened to them, that they did nothing wrong, that something bad was done to them. But the dignity of those women telling their stories and the fact that they've lived with this for 75 years is just so moving, and I think should just make us all feel that we owe it to them to try and change this situation so that people do get justice for what happened.
Wow.